Howdy. My name is Evan. I am the founder of BioEnergetic, BioEnergetic.com. I wanted to talk to you about a service that we offer called Soil Test Solutions. I've developed this through an organic lawn care company that I had many years ago. We combined this process through of the soil testing and prescription process that I'll describe with compost tea, and it worked wonderfully. So I've turned this into something that can really help the consultation process in regards to some of the limitations of soil testing that are on the market. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of people that do soil testing well. Most of them in the agricultural end of things, not the gardening end of things, if you will. So what I'm trying to do is make this process available to homeowners that may want to grow a healthier lawn. Hopefully not. We can talk into growing something you can eat. But it could be used in raised beds. It can be used to reuse potting soils. There are any number of applications for this process. So today I wanted to show you some of this through a PowerPoint presentation. And soil testing can be, quite a complicated thing. As I mentioned, developed this through a lawn care company, but the beautiful thing about soil is that it's not picky. There are many different types of soil, and good luck defining it, right? But the different types of soil that there are can be managed to what's been found to be a sweet spot and what's called the exchange capacity of the soil, and we're going to talk through that. But the premise of this is really to facilitate what I call personal agriculture. The idea that eating is an agricultural act. You don't have to grow all of your own food to be involved in the food system. Be agriculture. The premise is to be a part of agriculture. Realize it or not, we already are. So using our buying power to really, it defines what we're served. Supermarket, farmer's market, grocery store, restaurant, you name it. It's really important to understand how powerful we are, especially when we buy together in that regard. And then, of course, the epitome is to grow your own food. All of that being said, I'm a really strong proponent of kind of becoming our own experts. I think we pawned off a lot of the responsibility and the possibility that we have in being successful in our growing and in our health by not putting ourselves first in regards to the gut check. Modern medicine and modern agriculture, as many people that are involved that really care and are trying to do the right thing, is failing. Within this, there are some real tools that we can use to kind of, change our perspective. The tagline for Be Agriculture is what we think we grow. And really the idea is that our perspective drives our actions. I kind of woke up to all of this about 15 years ago. I found a book called Secrets of the Soil, and it introduced me to biodynamic agriculture, developed by Dr. Rudolf Steiner through the agriculture lectures back in 1924. It was the first reaction to chemical farming. And it was about celestial rhythms and almost homeopathic farming, if you will. It's far out stuff, I didn't quite believe all of it when I read it for the first time. I've spent a long time validating it, but I quickly realized in consulting through my garden center that I had for 15 years, called Progressive Gardens, that talking to a conventional grower, spraying energies wasn't going to work. There were some very fundamental things that needed to be done to really whip the soil into shape. And then at that point, some of these energetic approaches like biodynamics could be utilized a little bit more effectively. So the insight that I had was, the soil is an ecosystem or living system. It has a physical, mineral, biological, and energetic capacity. And not being aware of one of these components really allowed us to work against it. And that's really what modern agriculture has become. If you think about modern agriculture, it's physical and it's mineral. You plow and you fertilize. Organics brings in the biological realm, but conventional and organic completely discount the energetic realm. And biodynamics doesn't really reference the others. So the effort is to try to kind of bring them all together into some cohesive conversation so that we can be aware of them and then not work against them, and ideally start working towards them. So today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the mineral capacity of a living system. There's a term called the law of the minimum. This was really devised in an agricultural context by Justus von Liebig, who's kind of known as the grandfather of fertilizer. And his insight was that there was a realm of essential elements. There's anywhere from 11 to 17, depending on who you talk to. But that if these elements aren't present, the plant can't produce in the way that it can. They're required for growth. Let's say this is the basis of hydroponic agriculture. So the schematic really says a lot. If one of the elements is limited, a chain can only be as strong as its weakest link, right? So taking a really balanced approach towards the essential fertility of soil for plant growth is extremely important. It kind of gets diluted when you start talking about NPK. NPK is the 3 numbers you see on the front of a fertilizer. So there's far more to it than just three elements. So you have macronutrients, you have micronutrients within the essential realm, and then you have trace elements. And trace elements are really what the plant wants, not necessarily what the plant has to have, those essential elements. So this is a schematic of a product that my company used to make called Earth Tonic that shows all the earthbound elements in seawater. Most people think seawater is bad for plants, but diluted like a fertilizer, it's actually quite extraordinary. And you can see, by the elemental reference here, how much is missing out of a typical fertilizer. And the rhetorical question becomes, why would Mother Nature make an element not needed in the garden? And even if the plant doesn't use it directly, microbes can use it as cofactors to make enzymes. So there's all sorts of limitations that we put within the approach that we take. The typical approach is with fertilizer, defined as a chemical or natural substance added to soil to increase fertility. In all reality, fertilizer is a crutch. The forest doesn't need fertilizer to grow humongous trees. Soil is organized, it's alive. So this should be our goal in our gardens as well. Fertilizers can be artificial, man-made. They feed the plant. Organic fertilizers feed the soil. That's about as simple as you can make it. Organic is not just about being clean. It's about generating a better result by growing the soil's capacity to be soil. The result of many artificial fertilizers is obesity. They can trick us, right? They make the plant grow bigger, stronger, faster, and you end up with no fruit. I guess stronger is not really the best word for it, but that idea of like greening up a lawn, it makes the lawn grow green, and then we have herbicides that selectively kill the weeds and not the monocot grass. We're tricking ourselves in that respect. We really haven't achieved real health, and the nutrient density of our food is waning. So if you take a step forward from fertilizer, a lot of people, when they do soil testing, look at pH. pH is not a very good way of defining soil health. It's an algorithm of hydrogen. So we'll talk through the exchange capacity in a minute, and it might make a little more sense. But essentially, a pH, acidic pH, is an empty soil. What's there is hydrogen and not really much else. So when you use lime to increase pH, you're adding calcium. It's a positive charge held by the soil, kicks the hydrogen out of the way, and the pH goes up because there's less hydrogen. So it's very simple to correct the pH of soil, but it's not achieving a balance in the soil that defines an environment where plants can really grow effectively. So plants eat ions. The reason that hydroponic agriculture works, for example, is you can put salts in water that break out into the ionic form, like sodium and chlorine in water, into a sodium and a chlorine ion. You can make salts up that represent the essential fertility that plants require to grow. But you're skipping all sorts of vital components in regards to the benefits of soil by doing that. But the insight here is that this ionic form, either a positive cation or a negative anion, represents plant food. And as we know, opposites attract, right? There's an electrical affinity in all of life. And it just so happens that that's the case in soil. The main realm in which this is discussed is the cation exchange capacity, the ability of the soil to exchange positively charged elements. The majority of what plants require is positively charged. There's also an anion exchange capacity. So what the elements are doing is absorbing to the negative charge of clay and organic matter, sand being neutral. And the more clay and organic matter you have, the more electrical affinity there is to hold on to this nutrition, the less you have to fertilize. You have a bigger bucket of fertility, if you will, or gas tank, whatever the analogy is that you want to use. So this is a schematic that describes it. You can see the clay is negatively charged. You can see the potassium, the calcium, the magnesium, also the hydrogen. You can see the bait and switch where the plant exudes a hydrogen and it takes in a potassium. So over time, soil becomes acidic without input or natural occurrence, simply because it's becoming demineralized. So the work of Dr. William Albrecht back in the 1940s and 50s defined a sweet spot in the soil cation exchange capacity. And these numbers are a range. It's not an exact science, but it's extremely valuable information. The irony being that when you get this balance correct within range in the soil, the pH is always where you want it to be. It's kind of the afterthought of what it is that you're wanting to look at. So, I developed this process, not, on the backs of giants in some ways. And there are many outlets for this type of testing out in the agricultural market. Base saturation soil testing, the base saturation being the percentage of the element within the ability of the soil to be saturated electrically by these charges. It's actually the process we developed is very simple. We send you out when you purchase the kit. It's $115 for a single test. You can get it as low as $65 if you kind of pool your resources with your friends locally, or get multiple tests, simply because we send out return labels and some sampling materials and instructions to make sure that it's done properly. And that accounts for the shipping back and forth and to the lab and back and that sort of thing. It takes about 2 to 4 weeks to finish the process, depending on the pipeline. You can order this at BioEnergetic.com. And I wanted to give you a little bit of a taste of some of the data, just so that you can kind of start to wrap your mind around what we're doing. You can see this is an average local soil in my area. We have very low organic matter. We live in a coastal community, so we have sandy soil. Exchange capacity is relatively low, as you can see, based on the desire in that top line. But what I wanted to point out here is you see how the calcium percentage is right at kind of the lower end of what you would want, yet the pH is low. If you went to an extension service, most of the time you're going to get recommendations to use lime to increase the pH number here. And it absolutely would. You could raise it to 6.5 and call it good. But look at the deficiencies in magnesium, potassium, sodium, and a lot of the micronutrients. They're extremely exhausted in the soil. So while you could correct a pH number, you're ending up with extreme deficiencies in other elements, and that law of the minimum applies. The result that you're going to get is going to be really lacking. In this example, you can see same organization of data. See how this person had actually over-limed. They were using lime every single year to maintain their pH, and they got a perfect number. But look how high the calcium is. It's 10 percentage points above where you would really want it to be at most. So what that means is there's less room for the other elements in the soil. Again, results would be extremely limited in this kind of situation. You can kind of take a look at this as well. This is a client that I had through the organic lawn care company that I was describing. And you can see how the front and the backyard, were different. The beds might be different from the turf. The point is not necessarily to go soil testing everything, but to make the connection that all soil is not the same. And if you have a garden, or maybe you have, a lot of pride in your lawn and whatever the case may be, you can really kind of get down into the guts of what the issues are and learn a lot, not necessarily about what you have to do to make it work, but what not to use. Reasons for the pest and disease issues that you're having in your landscape. Those are not just bad luck. Weeds grow to regenerate this mineral balance, as do microbes in the soil. So using compost tea and, our perspective that, pests didn't just fly by our neighborhood and happen to land on our plants. They're actually attracted to unhealthy plants in the landscape through infrared vision that they have, crazy enough. So, really changing the way we look at this can have a drastic effect. And I wanted to leave you with a testimony that we generated last year with a Texas pasture grower. He was really blowing away the competition in his local area. He was using our soil test solutions approach with compost tea. And down to the bottom right there is an image of his fields now. He said it's above his knee in his testimony that he sent us. We took a soil test. We wrote up a prescription per acre for these mineral inputs that he needed to buy and apply. And most of this is accessible at your local garden center. If not, the micronutrients, keep in mind this is for an acre of land. So your lawn or your garden would be quite a different posture in terms of the amount of the material that you need. You can order most of it online, something that we would help you do if you were having an issue. But you can see, the results that he got. If you kind of go down and you look how his calcium got bumped, his magnesium came down. We didn't use dolomitic lime. We used high calcium lime. His potassium was already pretty good. The sodium came down. The boron, iron, manganese, copper, zinc, all of those were boosted. And the results that you're getting are fantastic. This is the testimony that he sent us. He said, using your soil test solutions process, the results are increasing exponentially, carrying 7 cow units per acre as opposed to the traditional 1/5 of a cow per acre. Cow unit, they define cow units so that they don't have to count and weigh each individual. They do it by weight. So he was carrying 28,500 pounds of beef on 4 acres compared to 800 on 5 acres is the average. And he followed up just not long ago. He says, now I have clover, peas, and veg up past my knees in the pasture. I barely grew rye in last year on a new pasture. So this stuff really does work. I'm happy to answer any questions people might have. So, seek me out on BioEnergetic.com. Check out our blog. We have some further content to really kind of educate you towards the process, and we'd love to work with you.